GrantTeaff took over a Baylor program in 1972 that had had a 3-28 record the 3 previous years, a record so bad some said Baylor should drop out of the Southwest Conference. In his 3rd year at the helm, Baylor won its first conference title in 50 years and went to the Cotton Bowl for the first time in history. The feat is still called the Miracle of the Brazos and earned Grant the title of Coach of the Year. His success has continued, and Grant today is one of the most respected coaches in the game. He is also one of the best motivational speakers in the country. GrantTeaff.
When we think of success in athletics, we think of winning. Therefore, it's important to be a winner in all areas of our involvement: spiritual, family, financial, social, and career. If you want to be a winner, you must prepare to win. You see, in the society in which we live today, too many people look at the won and lost column and say those in the lost column are losers, and the others are winners. But that's not necessarily so. The truth of the matter is you become a winner or a loser based on what you do with what you've been given. Now let's prepare to win. First, you have to realize that physical and technical preparation is only a part of it. The greater part is discovering and developing the intangibles that you possess. We all possess those intangibles, those characteristics and qualities that you can't see, feel, or touch, but yet they are the characteristics that separate the winners from the losers. You will have 2 players of equal size, speed, and skill. One will be successful over the other. Why? The intangibles. Desire. The team that wants to win the most is usually the team that's going to win. The individual that has that burning desire to be successful is usually the individual that's successful. The one that has that great amount of determination to stay with it, to never give up and to never quit, is an individual that will win more times than he loses. The capacity to be loyal is an intangible that we all possess. What a foundation for success loyalty is. Attitude. Attitude is the way you face life. And the way you face life is determined by what you put into the computer, the calculator, the video recorder, that is the human brain. If you want a positive winning attitude, you can have it. If you put bad negative things into the computer, you're going to have a losing attitude. So that is one of our intangibles that's so important to learn about and to develop. The Bible mentions 3 intangibles: faith, hope, and love. The Bible says that the greatest is love. Let's take a look at those 3 intangibles that we all possess. Faith is simply believing. Believing in things yet unseen, but believing. What a powerful force. I've seen so many lives changed by the power of belief. Young men began to believe in themselves. Individuals were able to latch on to something that they could believe in. For instance, in football, we have a philosophy. We develop an attack, offensively or defensively, and an individual begins to believe in that, and it increases his power for success. There are 3 basic areas of belief that I believe important. Number 1 is to believe in yourself. Self-esteem is an important part of all that we do. If you feel that you are worthy, your chances of success have risen greatly. Years ago, I came across something that I'd like to share with you because it says this in a nutshell. It goes like this: I am only one, but I am one. I can't do everything, but I can do something. And that which I can do, I ought to do. And that which I ought to do, by God's grace, I will do. It says so much about who we are and what we are. Too many people think little of themselves. They do not realize that they are created by a loving God, given the ability to be successful and to achieve. But yet that opportunity sometimes goes awry when we fail to use the power that is at hand. Years ago, I heard a young child talk about self-esteem. He was asked by his kindergarten teacher a pertinent question that we all have to ask ourselves. What do you think of yourself? The child's reply came sharply. Why, I'm terrific. The teacher said, why do you think you're terrific? He said, because God didn't create no junk. Surely the English was incorrect, but the thought was powerful. God did not create junk. He created you in his own image, gave you the ability to act and to think and to do. and to be successful. Utilize the power of believing in yourself. Belief in others has always fascinated me because as a child, when my father would step up and put his hand on my shoulder and say, "Grant, I believe you can do it. You can make the grade that you need to make in that course." I was fascinated because inside of me, I was motivated and stirred to do better because my dad believed in me. I guess one of the reasons I chose to be a coach is because it gives us a great opportunity to believe. You can take a young person and you can put your faith in him, and his life will many times be changed. I've had so many experiences in that area that I'd love to relate to you, but one comes to mind particularly. A young player that we had whose older brother had been an outstanding star for us. The brother was Neil Jeffrey, and he had led us to our first championship in 1974. The younger brother was not even recruited by Baylor. He went to Missouri and then was dissatisfied there and transferred and came as a walk-on and earned a scholarship. But he dreamed that he could be the quarterback for Baylor University and lead Baylor to another championship. Can you imagine two brothers leading one team to two championships? That was his dream. Well, we got into the 1980 season, and lo and behold, Jay Jeffrey, the young man, was our starting quarterback. We rocked along undefeated, and we came to our SMU ball game. The SMU game was extremely important, and as we got into the first half, bad things started happening to us, and we found ourselves down 14 points at halftime. Then we came back in the second half. Surely we were going to make a great comeback. We were backed up inside the 20-yard line after the kickoff, and Jay Jeffrey threw an interception directly to the cornerback. All he had to do was just step into the end zone. And it was another touchdown. They kicked the extra point, and we're down 21-0. When Jay Jeffrey came off the field, ready for the receiving team to receive the kickoff, he walked over toward me, his head down, and just as he approached me, waiting to hear my wrath, I assume, he looked up at me, and before I could say a word, Jay said, "Coach, am I out of the game? Am I going to play again?" And something inside me, faith, reached out to this young man. I knew he had the talent and the ability, and I put my hand on his shoulder as my dad had done to me so many years ago. And I said, "Sure, Jay, you're going back in. We've had some bad things happen to us, but I believe in you, and we're going to win." And he looked at me, and a broad smile creased his face, and he said, "Coach, we're going to do it. We're going to win." And when we did, 28-21 in the fourth quarter, and went on to win the Southwest Conference Championship by a whopping 3 games. Jay Jeffrey, an example of faith in others. The final aspect of faith, to me, is the most powerful because it deals with our relationship to God. As individuals, we have the opportunity to make a decision as to what type of relationship we want to have. That decision must be made and must be made carefully. I have made that decision a long time ago, and others will make it at various times in their lives. But something happened in my family that expressed the importance of believing in God. We've had many experiences with 3 daughters, but this one particular incident took place 5 years ago. Our older daughter, Tammy, was working in Dallas. She got up one morning and started to work. She was on the freeway there in Dallas, the heavy traffic, and all of a sudden, she lost her vision. She could just barely see an outline of an automobile in front of her. She somehow managed to get off the expressway as that car in front of her turned off, and she came to a stop at a spot away from the curb, got out of the car, staggered up to a door, knocked on the door, and told the person that answered that she was in serious trouble because she had lost her sight. Donnell and I were in San Juan, Puerto Rico for a little vacation. We had just arrived at the hotel when we were handed a message to call my office. My assistant head coach, Cotton Davidson, was on the other end of the telephone, and he was sharing with me what had happened in Dallas. You cannot imagine the heart-sick feeling that Donnell and I had, not to know what was wrong with Tammy. In fact, the doctor's first evaluation when they got her to the intensive care was that she'd had a brain hemorrhage. And when Cotton called us there in San Juan, he said, "Coach, they're going to operate this morning to try to save her life." I said, well, we'll be turning around and coming back immediately, but immediate was not the way we were going to come. In fact, it was the next morning before we could get a flight out, and we spent a fretful and tough night trying to get information from Texas. Finally, the next morning, we talked to my brother-in-law, Dr. Carroll Carver, who is an oral surgeon, and Carroll called and said it was not a blood hemorrhage. They had checked her just before operating and found that there was no blood in her spinal column and that they felt it was something else. It looked like now that it is an aneurysm or a tumor of the brain. Please hurry back. We finally caught our plane and flew back to the city of Dallas, and some friends met us there. We drove to the hospital in Dallas and all the way concerned and in prayer, worried about our beautiful daughter. We arrived there. We saw our two younger daughters, Tracy and Lane. They had been there all night waiting, and then we spoke to the doctors before they ushered us down to intensive care. We walked in intensive care. It was a frightening scene because all of the instruments for saving lives are there in all of the cubicles, and behind a couple of curtains was our daughter Tammy. We walked over and spread the curtains open, and her eyes were covered and she could not see, but somehow she sensed our presence. She said, "Mom, Dad." We rushed over to her and held her where there were not needles sticking in her and tubes sticking out. And she said, "I'm so glad you're here." And we burst into tears. That was our precious daughter. She said, "You know, Mom, you know, Dad," she said, "it's real. It's really real." We said, "What, honey?" She said, "God is really real. All the time on the freeway, when I lost my sight, I felt his presence, and somehow we got off. And then I walked up to that door, and the person was able to carry me right to intensive care, and there was a surgeon right there in intensive care that took me in and took care of me. And another doctor came in and prayed with me. So I knew that God was with me every step of the way. And in these moments here in intensive care, not knowing what's going on, his presence has sustained me. Mom, Dad, isn't it great to know that when you're so far away, God is always with me? He's not only with Tammy, he's with me and Donnell and Lane and Tracy. And he can be with you if that's your commitment. The second thing the Bible mentions is dreaming dreams. I think of that as setting goals. You can't set goals unless in your mind you dream the dream of what you want to be accomplished. You have to think about it. You have to visualize it, and hope signifies that. You must set goals in all areas of your life. Too many people fail to set goals in all areas. Just they will set goals in some specific area. Financial, career-wise, and neglect and leave off the other areas. But setting goals is so important if we'll do it and do it properly. Now, here's some techniques that I have used for years, and they have proven to be extremely successful. Write them down. What are your goals? You write them down specifically. Secondly, set a time. When are you going to accomplish this particular goal? Write it down. Thirdly, now list 5 ways that you can reach each one of those goals. Write them down first of all, and then come back and prioritize those 5 ways you're going to use to reach the goal. By prioritizing, I mean write down the one that is most important and then start to work to reach it. Then the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth. That way you'll be utilizing the ways that will allow you to reach your goals immediately. If you want to be a winner, you must set goals in other areas. These 2 areas I deem to be extremely important. You must have a goal to have a positive attitude. If you will have a positive attitude, you can be a successful person. Many years ago, I had a young man join our program who I believed very strongly in as a person coming out of high school that he could be a player. I sat him down, as I do all of our other freshmen and upperclassmen and coaches, as he came in for the beginning of the year. And I asked this young man to set his goals for his freshman year. And we started to talk about them and write them down. And we did. We found ways that he might reach some of his goals, and then ultimately I asked him, as I ask all of the others, what is your most important goal for your freshman year? Now, you'd be surprised to know how many look me in the eye and simply say, Why, I want to win the Heisman Trophy my freshman year. Personally, I'd rather them make the travel squad. But when I asked this young man what his goal was for his freshman year, he looked me in the eye and said, Coach Teaff, I want to make a positive contribution to this team. Wow, think about it. A positive contribution to the team. Can you imagine how important that one particular goal is if every member of your family set that as a goal? Make a positive contribution to that which you're involved. If you can get every member of your organization, every member of the team, so to speak, to set that as a goal, I guarantee success. That's how important that is. The second thing that I feel that you must set a goal in is simply to improve every day. You must improve. If you're going to be successful, you're going to be a winner in life, you've got to take what you have and improve on it. Get better. How do you do that? Well, the first thing I believe you have to do is to know thyself. Find out who you are, where you're going, and what you have to get there with. We use a technique with our players. Donnell and I use it in marriage seminars. We use it with our little campers, 8 and 10-year-olds, and it works with every group. Here's the way we do it. You list your assets and your liabilities. Now, wait a minute. I'm not talking about the financial end of what you're doing, but you need to be writing down those characteristics and capabilities that are assets to you as you try to accomplish your goals. Write them down on a sheet of paper. You got to be honest. You got to really look inside yourself and say, really, what do I have that will allow me to be successful? And write them down. Now you do the same thing with the liabilities, and that's the tough part. Everybody wants to sort of look around those negative things that we all possess and keep us from being successful. I've known a lot of individuals that could have been great football players if they had paid the price to eliminate the negatives. That's what you got to do. It's like the old song. You got to accentuate the positive and eliminate the negatives. Write them down, study them, and then start to work. The second thing that I'd ask you to do is on that same sheet of paper, about midway down, write down what your commitments are. Now, I'm going to talk about commitments more in a moment. But without commitments, you cannot be successful. It's interesting that we find many times that when we evaluate our commitments, we're not really committed as we thought we were. What are you committed to? The last thing that I would ask you to do, and it has to do with goals, is to write down in a sentence form how you see yourself 10 years from now. Now, that's an interesting question because it does have to do with two things, visualization and goal setting. You got to visualize what you want to be, and then you have to be able to set the goals to get where you want to be. Now, it varies. I will ask my 10-year-olds that same question, and it's going to vary. I will ask the young married couples in our seminars that Donnell and I have how they see themselves 10 years from now, and it may vary. With our players or with our coaches or with adults, mature adults, it varies. One time about 3 years ago, Donnell and I were doing a marriage seminar. These seminars are called The Best Is Yet to Be, taken after Robert Browning's poem, Rabbi Ben Ezra. But we believe that everything can be improved, that tomorrow is going to be better than today. I frankly believe that the best football team I've ever had is going to be next year. I believe that with all my heart. So we try to teach this to individuals that are involved in trying to make their marriage better. And here's how we do it. We ask them, as a part of this procedure, to write down how they see themselves 10 years from now. At one seminar, we had a group of young people that were going to get married in June. We had some that had been married 5, 10, or 15 years, and we had 2 couples that had been married 60 years. One of the gentlemen was 96 years old, meaning he didn't get married till he was 36, but he had been married 60 years. And when I asked that question to the group, all of a sudden I remembered that there was this man, 96 years old. Wow, I said. I went on with the question. We finished a little portion of the seminar. My wife came up to the microphone, and all of a sudden I saw the gentleman coming out of the auditorium, up toward Donnell. Slowly, carefully. He was a little fella that had been around a long time. He walked up to Donnell, reached up, grabbed her by the arm, and says, Miss Teaff, you know that question Coach Teaff asked about how you see yourself 10 years from now? She said, oh, yes, sir, I know the question well. He said,
You want to know what I wrote down?
Donnell said, well, yes.
He said, listen, I just put down, I hope I can see myself 10 years from now.
Well, that's a darn good goal when you think about it. But that's what you want to do. Write down how you see yourself 10 years from now. To be truly committed, to set priorities, and to be disciplined, and to really care, you must use the power of love. The power of love is so important to mankind. Love initially came to man through a loving God who cared about us, was concerned for us, and still is. Then love was taken by man and used as a part of his being. Rogers and Hammerstein wrote, "Love isn't love until you give it." And I believe that. We can receive love, but satisfying results come when we give it, in terms of all that we do. Commitment actually is love spelled differently. If you love your mate, if you love your purpose in life, if you love what you're doing, you are committed. We talked about commitment a little while ago and how tough it is to come to grips with really being committed to something. You must have an enthusiasm for what you're doing, but you must love it enough to really be committed. Love sets priorities. One of the things that we have always enjoyed in our family is a fun relationship. With 3 little girls, we have tried to approach life with a smile on our face, yet be serious when we needed to be. When our girls were very small, we started a tradition that still is rampant in our family, though our children are all grown. The tradition was simply this, that on April Fool's Day, Donnell and I would come up with the biggest April Fool joke you could imagine. The first one I remember is we were living in San Angelo. I was coaching at Angelo State University, and the girls, the 2 older ones, were in 1st and 3rd grade. We got up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Donnell and I slipped into the rooms and set the clocks up to 8:30. Then the alarm sounded. We flipped on the lights and ran back into their rooms and told the girls that we had overslept and it was time to get gone because we were late. And you've never seen little blonde-headed girls running up and down the hall, combing their hair and brushing their teeth, out the front door into pitch black darkness. Then that familiar yell, "April Fool," and it's been going that way ever since. When our littlest girl was 9 years old, Donnell happened to be in the hospital in Waco, Texas. I was coaching at Baylor University, and we were having a hard time coming up with an April Fool joke. Now, one of the things that we were planning for the summer was a family trip. We always took a family trip together, and this one we had saved our money for 3 years, and we were going to take a cruise down to the Bahamas. I called Donnell at the hospital. She was there with just a minor back problem, and I was busy in spring practice, and I said, "Honey, have you thought of anything to do the girls?" She said, "No, I can't think of a thing." Said, "This thought did occur, though. What if we had the travel agent send a letter that would come to the house on April the 1st stating that the girls' reservations had been canceled, but you and I get to go to the Bahamas?" I said, "You have a devious mind, but that's great." She said, "Okay, I'll call the travel agent and take care of the situation." Well, on April the 1st, I couldn't wait to get the first phone call, which I got about mid-afternoon. My middle daughter, who was a sophomore in high school, came in. Though the letter was addressed to me, she reached down, picked it up, opened it because it was about the trip to the Bahamas. And when she read the letter, I got the saddest phone call you've ever heard in your life. "Oh, Daddy, you and Mother are going to get to go to the Bahamas, and the girls, we have to stay at home. They messed up the reservations." I said, "Oh, honey, that's so bad. I feel so sorry about that. I tell you what, Mother and I'll send a postcard from every port." Well, it was so good that I wanted to be home when the bus arrived with the 9-year-old. When I got there, stationed myself in the living room, the bus pulled up, and here little Lane came romping through the sliding glass doors and saw me standing there, face down to my chin and chin down to the middle of my front side. And all of a sudden, she said, "Oh, my, what's wrong, Dad?" I said, "Honey, I've got something to talk to you about that's very serious, but first I want you to read the letter on the table." She walked over, her little hands shaking and trembling, beads of perspiration on her little 9-year-old face. She reached down, picked up the letter, and read it. Then she just flipped it on the table, bounced by me, hit the TV, flopped down in front of it. I said, "Lane, aren't you upset about not getting to go to the Bahamas?" She turned and looked at me, and she said, "Oh, Dad, you win some, you lose some, and some get rained out." I said, "Listen, we're going to the hospital to see Mother in a little bit, and I want you to ride with me." I always would do that when I wanted to get them separated and get inside their minds. We're driving toward the hospital, and I popped the question. I said, "Lane, I don't understand why you were not upset because we were not going to get to take you to the Bahamas." She said, "That's easy, Dad." I said, "Well, if it's so easy, tell me about it." She said, "When I walked in that door and I saw your face, I just knew that you were going to tell me something horrible about Mother at the hospital. Then you said, 'Lane, go over and read the letter.' And I just knew it was a horrible letter from the doctor telling me something bad about Mother. And when I read it, and all I lost was a trip to the Bahamas, it had no meaning. Love sets priorities." I contend that discipline is the greatest form of love. If you really care for someone, or you care for yourself, you care for others, then you're willing to do what it takes to discipline. I've found as a football player and as coaching as a football coach that discipline is one of the most important ingredients that an individual or a team can possess as they strive to be winners on the football field. Discipline yourself, discipline your family, and discipline others. That is the essence of love. If you love, you care. Caring about individuals is an important part of human involvement. I've found that people that really care have a tendency to achieve success. Oh, they might not make the most money in the town, or they might not have the biggest building or the fanciest home. But in terms of success and reaching other lives and accumulating those things that are important on this earth, there is much success. The story that I believe both expresses and illustrates the importance and the power of love came to me one night as I was talking with a friend of mine named Bruce Bickle. At that time, Bruce Bickle was one of the FCA coordinators for a district up in the Chicago area. He had been in the Vietnam War, and in the closing stages of the war, when Saigon was about to fall, one of Bruce's jobs was to go through the city streets and pick up the homeless and abandoned children. He found two one afternoon. They happened to be brothers. One had been injured with shrapnel from the shelling. So Bruce carried the 6-year-old, the younger one, to the medical area, and he carried the 9-year-old to the orphanage. Bruce had just gotten at the orphanage when a telephone call came from the medical area saying that the 6-year-old was about to lose his life if they did not find the appropriate blood. Bruce told the medical man that there was a good possibility that the 9-year-old brother would have the same type blood, and that he would ask the child if he would give blood to save the younger boy. Bruce asked the young man, and the child hesitated for a moment and then said, "Yes, I will give blood." Bruce carried him over to the medical area. They strapped him down on a stretcher, moved him close to his younger brother, and started the transfusion. A few moments had passed, and Bruce, being in the room, heard a sob. He thought it was the younger child, possibly in pain, and as he walked over to the two stretchers, he realized that it was the 9-year-old that was sobbing. Bruce bent over and said, "Are you in pain, son?" The 9-year-old said, "No, sir." And then he broke into a deeper sob. Bruce says, "What is it?" He said, "Sir, how long will it take me to die?" Bruce smiled and said, "Son, you're not going to die. You're only giving a portion of your blood to save your brother's life." The young child had made the decision to give his blood, thinking that he would give up his own life. That's love. That's the epitome of love. The Bible calls it agape, unconditional love. If you want to be successful, use that force and that power that is within you. Don't be afraid or hesitant to tell somebody you love them, you care about them. For years, I've told my football team, "I love you." Now, I must admit that some days I love them more than others, but I love them, and I express that to them. It's nothing to be ashamed of. Your own family members, let them know that you care. Love can be a powerful, motivating force in their own life. Utilize it. Finally, to be a winner, you must overcome defeat in every way. Overcoming defeat gives us the courage to go on and to think and act like a winner. You know, Tammy, our daughter, who was in that hospital, and I related the story about how she had felt that God was with her while we were away, has had the ability to overcome defeat in her own life. You see, what she didn't have was a blood clot, an aneurysm, or a tumor. But what she did have was multiple sclerosis. And she has had to learn to live with that since that time, and she has done it beautifully, with a positive attitude, looking to life and living it to its fullest. Like the Bible says, when we have adversity and bad things happen to us, then we can take that and develop our own character. Gives us strength of character, and strength of character allows us to believe more and more in the Bible and have faith in God and to face life and to overcome those defeats. At the outset, I said winning was how you played the game, and I believe that. Let me conclude with this. Winning is in the way you play the game each and every day. It's in your attitude and in the things you say. It's not in reaching wealth or fame. It's not in reaching goals that others seek to claim. Winning is having faith and giving confidence to a friend. It's never giving up or never giving in. It's in wanting something so badly you could die. Then if it doesn't come, be willing to give it one more try. Winning is being clean and sound of mind. It's being loyal to and serving all mankind. Winning is in your teammates, friends, family, and what they learn from you. Winning is having character in everything you do. Winning, it's how you play the game.